Hey guys, Clayton here. Well, it's already getting cold outside, the tree is all set up and lit up. You know what that means? It's Christmas time. And to celebrate this monumental occasion, I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite Christmas movies, if not my favorite. I also consider it one of my favorite comedies, one of my favorite family movies. In fact, I go as far as to say it's one of my favorite movies of all time. The 1990 John Hughes written, Chris Columbus directed classic, Home Alone. No one knew how much this movie would make such an impact. After Home Alone's release, not only did it get sequels, video games, the Genesis one being the best one, but also came with family movies trying to ape off its success by replicating the style of slapstick, such as Three Ninjas, Blank Check, and Mr. Nanny. And John Hughes, God rest his soul, attempted to replicate the success he had with Home Alone with not just 2 and 3, but movies like Dennis the Menace, Baby's Day Out, his remake of 101 Dalmatians, and Flubber. The only one that had one instance of that kind of slapstick and was genuine throughout was his remake of A Miracle on 34th Street. But 30 years after its release and with the sequels and knockoffs, does the first movie still hold up? Let's find out. For the few who don't know the story, it follows the youngest of the McAllister family, Kevin, who is not having the best of time right now with them as he is constantly picked on by siblings and cousins. And after a scuffle with his older brother Buzz, he's sent to bed early where he makes a wish to never see his family again. But the next day, as the family rushes to make their flight to Paris for Christmas, they accidentally leave Kevin behind where he believes his wish came true. And as he has fun being man of the house, he now has to protect his home from 2 bumbling burglars through a set of booby traps, all the while his mother makes a mad dash to return home to her son. I think like some people, I didn't see this movie when it came out back in 1990 as I was not born yet. However, I did grow up with this movie on VHS thanks to my grandparents, and it was one of my most rewatched movies as a kid. I mean, who else remembers this very 90s Pepsi commercial?
What makes you cool is your attitude, your inner self. It's not the way your hair is cut. It's not the clothes you wear. Not the clothes you wear. It's not what you drink. You got that right. You got Pepsi for me? Who knew?
But even watching it now as a 26-year-old man, I still think the movie holds up after all these years. I think what makes Home Alone work as well as it does is that at some point we can relate to something that Kevin is going through. At one point in our lives as kids, we think everyone's out to get us. We at a time hated our families for something so ridiculous. And this movie shows what happens that even if we get the wish of being alone, and even if we do get mad at our families, we still love them deep down inside. It shows that it may be fun at first to be alone, but it also shows that we have to be responsible, and also shows how empty our lives would be if we don't have a family to be with, especially around Christmas. It's something not only kids can get something out of, but also adults can remind us of how we were when we were at Kevin's age. Why it works is how genuine everyone is. Kevin could be a pain at first, but he understands how much he needs his mom and his family in his life, and learns to be more responsible and not to be as helpless. And speaking of which, I love the lengths the mother Kate goes through in order to get back with her son. It also shows how much she misses him and how much they need each other. And both Macaulay Culkin and Captain O'Hara are perfect in their roles. Again, going back to genuine, Macaulay is able to capture the essence of an arrogant, bratty kid that can outsmart adults in the vein of Bart Simpson, but also the innocence of a kid as well. Kids can relate, but adults can admire how smart he is and how he thinks things through. And O'Hara's lengths that she goes through is also admirable, and it's also relatable for the adults who have kids and that would go through similar trials just to get to their child. And to add to how genuine it is, the family is also believable. They could have made the other members of the McAllisters one-dimensional, but they're portrayed realistically. They argue, but you can tell they miss Kevin and still love each other like a real family. Take Buzz for example. He picks on Kevin, but at the end he's glad to see him again. Moving away from the family, let's talk about the wet bandits themselves, Harry and Marv, portrayed by Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern. Although they can come off a bit comedically exaggerated, they have great chemistry together and work off each other flawlessly. And while I will talk about the booby trap sequence in a bit, they also pull off how much pain they're put through, especially Stern as his comedic expressions are priceless. And finally, one important character to mention is Old Man Marley, played by Robert Blossom. At first, we know about him through Buzz, as told as a creepy legend about how he supposedly killed his family. But when we get to the church scene, we find out that he's a nice man that's going through similar family troubles as Kevin, and he not only comes back at the end to apprehend the wet bandits, but has a very emotional payoff. Speaking of the church scene, that's a moment that is something you'd come to appreciate more as an adult because of the wonderful character development by finding out Marley's family troubles, and Kevin learned to appreciate his family, and also John Williams' beautiful score. On the subject of music, on the other hand, let's talk about John Williams' score. Yes, I own the physical CD of the entire score. I also own that Home Alone Christmas CD that they advertised on the VHS of Home Alone 2. Yeah, I know I'm a nerd.
It's a Home Alone Christmas from Fox Records.
Have a holly jolly Christmas.
Yes!
A very special collection of holiday songs sung by very special artists.
Christmas tree, I'm certain.
Bring home the magic and the music of a Home Alone Christmas.
It's Christmas. It's Christmas. And I'm going home.
Available on audio cassette and compact disc this holiday season.
If I'm gonna be honest, this is among probably my top 5 favorite of John Williams' scores. Not only is it memorable and iconic, he manages to capture the feeling of Christmas, but Kevin's innocent nature. He also uses his music for different tones and feelings. A dramatic, eerie tone for when Kevin was afraid of Marley, a heroic march when Kevin is setting up the traps, and it hits the emotional sweet spot thanks to the Oscar-nominated Somewhere in My Memory, which the instrumental fragments, especially towards the end, give me chills in a good way. It's a part of my Christmas playlist and will continue to be there. The movie is also shot beautifully. Chris Columbus doesn't get enough credit as a director, but like Williams' score, he captures the feeling of Christmas. Not just with the snow, but filling the screen with items colored red and green. And it's fitting since Christmas is a family holiday and fits with the themes of the movie. One detail that I love that I read about is how at the beginning, everything is filmed above Kevin's head, making him feel small and helpless. But towards the movie's end, it's shot from below, making him feel taller and more confident, which I think is a clever way, visually, of showing Kevin's development throughout the movie. And now let's talk about the booby trap scene. This made me laugh as a kid, and it still makes me laugh my ass off as an adult, no matter what. Like legit, I still laugh out loud during this sequence. And it's not just because of Pesci and Stern's comedic delivery, but due to perfect editing and timing. My personal favorite is with Marvin the Nail. It's one of the best examples of perfect comedic timing that I've seen. While many have shown how dangerous and deadly the traps can get, Better Watch Out especially shows how deadly a paint can be, it's more harmless in comparison to the sequels. Speaking of which... Well, since I have a bit of time, before I finish things off, let me give you my quick thoughts on the sequels. Starting with the 1992 one, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
Guess who's alone in New York this Christmas?
Do it, it's.
You gotta do better than this, kid!
Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
Another Christmas in the trenches.
Because of the massive success of the first, of course Home Alone had to get a sequel. Many are divisive about Home Alone 2. Some love it, even more than the first, some hate it, and some are in the middle. I fall into the latter. Home Alone 2 is not a bad movie, far from it, but I don't think it's nowhere near as good as the first movie. Probably my biggest issue, like everyone, is that it's essentially a repeat of the first movie, except Kevin's lost in a big city, and coincidentally bumps into the wet bandits again. It's like, why do a sequel if you're just gonna remake the first, except in a new setting? As for the traps, while I feel they're kinda mean-spirited, like how did Harry and Marv survive, I did find them sorta funny. Well, except for one, and I think Hardcore Kid said it best.
Except for the scene where Marv gets turned into a shock skeleton. That shit still traumatizes me to this very day.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Though despite those issues, there are some moments that keep me coming back to it. One being that it's Christmas in New York, the shots around it are beautiful. This and Elf make me want to visit the city around Christmas time. The acting's still good, John Williams does another great score, and, well, like everyone, Tim Curry as the concierge is the best part of the movie. He's so over the top Tim Curry in this, and it just makes his scenes more memorable.
A limousine and a pizza. Compliments of the Plaza Hotel. Have a lovely day.
Stay in your rooms! This is an emergency! There's an insane guest with a gun!
I love you!
So despite some issues, I think Home Alone 2 is a decent sequel. Not great, not completely awful either. It could have been better, but at the same time, it could have been a whole lot worse. Next up, Home Alone 3.
Nobody's gonna do anything about this. I'll just have to do it myself.
It's a video camera. Someone's on to us. I have it.
Boo! We're so busted.
Gotcha!
See ya!
They almost done in there?
Not gonna find me up there, you big dumb law-breaking knuckleheads! Here's got a bad news. Heads up! Ouch.
Home Alone 3.
While Hughes returns to write, editor of the first two movies, Raja Gosnell, takes the director's chair, and it ends up kind of mediocre. To be fair, I'll give it credit that it tries to do something different compared to 2, and while Alex D. Linz isn't as great as Culkin, he does have a bit of charm and charisma. Plus, I like the idea that he tries calling the police, no one believes him, and he tries to take matters into his own hands. Aside from that, it shows that the concept has worn out. This doesn't have the charm of the first, and the jokes don't even quite hit. Having 4 bad guys makes everything more crowded, and unfortunately, the traps are kinda lame. Creative, but not as good. But as mediocre as this was, it's not as awful as Home Alone 4, Taking Back the House.
New on DVD and video, Home Alone, Taking Back the House.
Here they come. Hello, Marv.
Kevin's back.
Kevin?
In the biggest adventure of the year.
Awesome.
The house is bigger. The gadgets are slicker.
Door open.
Kevin's in charge, and the bad guys haven't learned a thing.
Hi, Mommy.
It's like he's stalking me.
Home Alone, Taking Back the House.
I'm not gonna mince words. Screw this movie and the one-horse open sleigh it rode in on. Back in 2017, I did a list on DeviantArt called the top 12 worst Christmas specials in movies, and in it, I put this as number 1. I plan on remaking it into video form, and I guarantee this will still be number 1. It's unfunny, the characters are unlikable, and probably its biggest sin is how bland and vanilla it all is. Screw Home Alone 4. And there isn't much to say about Home Alone the Holiday Heist. It's better than 4, but not great either. Again, I'll give it credit that it tries to do something different and it's competently made compared to 4. It's just still strictly okay. So as you can see through the course of the other sequels, Home Alone seemed like it should have just been a one movie kind of thing. Almost reminds me of another film that should have been just a one movie thing. But I wonder. So on the whole, while the sequels have declined in quality a bit, Home Alone still remains one of my favorite Christmas movies and one of my favorite comedies and even one of my favorite movies. It made me laugh as a kid and it still makes me laugh as an adult. If I were to give it a rating, screw it. It's a 10 out of 10. There are minor problems, but I can overlook them because the rest of the movie is so good. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and this is Clayton signing out. And if you'll excuse me, I'm hungry for a cheese pizza. Oh, and if you want my thoughts, or at least my ratings on the sequels, Home Alone 2 is like a 6.5 out of 10. Home Alone 3 is like 5 out of 10. Home Alone 4 is a 1 out of 10. And Home Alone the Holiday Heist is, I'd probably say 5 out of 10 as well. Alright, Clayton, sign off, making a cheese pizza. Ah, a lovely cheese pizza just for me.